Indianapolis is scheduled for April the 10th. That hearing will be continued to May the 15th. So please don't go downtown on April 10th. Don't waste your time. The next opportunities that there will be for the community to come together here and talk about issues, and we'll set up more chairs, will be on April the 16th, which is the next land use meeting, regular land use meeting for the Civic League. This petition will be on at 6:30. We all heard that. If at the end of this meeting, the community wishes to come together for another community meeting just about this issue, we will schedule that meeting for April the 2nd at 6 o'clock. So at the end of this meeting, you will leave here knowing whether or not we're gonna have another meeting on April the 2nd, but there will definitely be another meeting on April the 16th. In the meantime, can you hear me in the back? Okay. I was a preschool teacher for 40 years, so I'm used to yelling. If you would like to contact me for information, send your opinions about things, get questions. Again, my name is Kathy Burton. You are welcome to contact me. My email address is cb7801@aol.com. My phone number is 317-847-9959. I will also be asking the petitioner to provide contact information as they do their presentation. The format for this is as follows. First of all, there's a lot of us here. Please turn your cell phones down. Please keep your side conversations at a no. And everybody, it's a crowded room, our acoustics are questionable, everybody will want to hear what is going on. So please, Jennifer, don't do that right now.
I just want to catch everyone where to go.
Please, like I said, please keep your conversations down. We are going to ask the petitioner to make a presentation initially. I would like for you to try and hold your questions until the end of that presentation. They were sent an extensive list of questions prior to this. You may get your questions answered. So please try and hold your questions. When we get to the question and answer period, I will call on you from the chair. I will do my best to keep track of who's first, middle, and last. But I will ask, there are several general issues that I know are going to be raised. I'm going to ask, in the interest of time, to try not and repeat questions that have already been asked. And I know that's difficult, especially if this impacts your property directly. The other thing is this. The Civic League has not taken a position on this. This meeting this evening is to gather information. This meeting is so that you can find out what you need to know is going on. So if it appears in any of my comments or how I conduct the meeting that we have taken a side, that is incorrect. Like I said, this is the first time. Half of our land use members are missing because of spring break. So there are actually 9 people on the land use committee. They do all live here in the township. That is a question that often comes up. They are all volunteers. We do not make the legal decision about the zoning. That authority lies with the city of Indianapolis. With that, the final thing is I expect all of you to be on your best behavior. Land use issues are very emotional, they are very personal, and I realize that tempers can flare, people do get emotional. I certainly don't blame you. What we want this evening is to get information out on the table. So with that, I'm going to introduce Joe Calderon, who is the attorney for this petition. And like I said, I'm going to ask you to try and hold your questions until Joe is done.
Thank you. My name is Joe Calderon. I'm with Barnes & Thornburg here in Indianapolis. I practice real estate law, do a lot of land use and zoning. I've been out to the Civic League many, many times over the years. This is a pretty big crowd, but the good news is I recognize this is a public process. So you all are of course welcome, those of you who received notice, those of you who didn't receive notice. We are here tonight to do an introduction of this project. We knew in advance that somebody would likely continue our case to the May hearing. So we look at this as an opportunity to present our presentation regarding the project, things that we thought were important as we did the conceptual plan, why we're doing this here, things like that. We know that there will be questions that we cannot answer tonight, and that's why we plan on coming back at least once, maybe twice more, depending on whether we are invited to the April 2nd meeting, and then of course on April 16th. My direct phone number is 317-231-7787, and my email address is jcalderon, CALDERON, at B as in Bravo, T as in Tango, law.com. Feel free, if you forget to ask a question or don't get an opportunity tonight, call or email me. This is clearly a top priority. It's a very important project. With me tonight are Matt Stipula and Brian Rossi. They're with the engineering firm of EMH&T. They will be able to answer a lot of technical questions. In Franklin Township, we always have questions regarding drainage and things like that. So while we are not at full engineering, we do have a pretty good idea, and we have engaged with some of the permitting people that will be making decisions based on plans that they present to them down the road. We're way, way, way before that. So without further ado, I'm gonna run through this. So the initial question is, for those of you who don't know or might have a curiosity, what is a data center? And a data center basically is a place where there is storage, computers that store data. So if you look at my phone, I've got something from CBS Sports, something else, some other meeting invite. Every time we use our devices and connect to the outside world, that creates data. We watch videos, we stream, we do all kinds of things. Artificial intelligence is certainly at the forefront of data capability now. So data centers manage that information, hold it. They allow us to do all of the things that we take for granted on a day-to-day basis. So
Excuse
Can you
me,
please maximize the
we
slide?
can't see you, can't see the screen, we can only see you.
do you want to do that?
That would be better.
Do you want to sit down?
Thank you.
You want this chair, Matt?
Might be helpful.
Thank you.
So, what's happened in the last few years, the state of Indiana adopted some statutes that basically encourage and want to be at the forefront of data centers, and they've incentivized them at the state level, okay? So, what you've probably seen, and if you watched the news last night, the town of Pittsburgh approved a data center last night. There have been other ones approved across the state for different users. Last night's data center, to my understanding, is what we call a merchant data center, where it's a developer that's going to be doing the development, building the buildings, and they will rent it out to end users that will rent space to store their data. Let's go to the next slide, Matt. So, all the data center campus is having multiple data centers, kind of like a business park within the same single property. So, number one question, why here? We have a client that has been engaging through its real estate brokers to look for sites that are in the general Indianapolis area for reasons that that's where a lot of the data need is. In particular, the real estate team works with utility companies to determine where the best power sources are. So as a combination of location availability, power availability, this location was actually working in conjunction with AES because there's a pretty big transmission line that goes right through the middle of this property. The other thing about this location, in terms of very preliminary, what we call due diligence, which are initial findings about the property that the real estate development team considers. I'm a small part of that. We look for zoning opportunities that make sense. Some of it may not make sense to you sitting here tonight as nearby property owners. But in Indianapolis, we are what we call a comprehensive plan jurisdiction, meaning that the city of Indianapolis has mapped out where they expect and want, based on, supposedly, community input, where they want commercial uses to be, residential uses to be, industrial uses to be, and the significant majority of this site is planned for either light industrial use or mixed use office industrial. This site is also located within a critical area of the comprehensive plan, which gives us some additional guidance. There were no uses restricted in the critical area. What it did say is, listen, we know that this quadrant is bounded by residential, particularly to the east, the south, and across Troy to the north. And the critical area says, we would like you to buffer the perimeter appropriately, and we would like you to kind of internalize the development. We would like you to use your truck traffic entrance, your main entrance, off of Post Road and not the other roads that surround. Right now, we're planning on having our main entrance both for construction and ultimate use off of Post Road across from Manheim. When we talked to the city planning department about this, what kind of zoning we would want, what they would like to see, there were several options. There were light industrial options, I-1 or I-2, or what we ended up filing under is a CS, which is basically a commercial planned development. And the reason that the city wanted the CS is they felt like they could restrict uses a little better, and that they could kind of control the development through a development statement and a conceptual site plan, which is not technically required under the general categories of I-1 or I-2. Again, this site is already served by utilities. We are working with AES on the power and working with citizens on water. We have about 470 acres as part of this, which is enough to kickstart the development and then fully complete it out years down the road. One of the things that we heard that was important to the community and some of the rumor mill is, who's doing this? I'm under attorney-client privilege. I can't tell you exactly who that is. What we will tell you is that this is a United States-based company. It's a Fortune 100 company. They choose to remain anonymous as they go through due diligence. We hope you can understand and respect that. But this is an experienced company, obviously with the financial wherewithal to get this done, and they work with data all over the world and with significant operations in the United States. So, as most of you may know, Indianapolis has a variety of zoning districts. They all have a letter associated with it, and then in many cases, a number. In this case, to the post road frontage, there's already existing commercial. You can see the C4 just south of the interchange, or just off of the interchange at Post. There's a little bit of that that's part of this project. The vast majority is DA, meaning that's basically our last agricultural designation under the zoning code. DA is typically a placeholder for something that might be developed in the future. In this particular case, the DA would allow farming, it would allow one house every 3 acres. It's not a significantly dense district. That's as a matter of right. Now, if you go to the next slide, and this is the comprehensive plan, you can see it outlined in red. You can see the purple and the lighter shade. That's light industrial and industrial mixed use, transitioning towards residential on the east at Davis. So the comprehensive plan is kind of the guideline for future land use and is the principal document that the city planners look to when they make a zoning recommendation. The city planners don't make the decision, but they do make a recommendation to the decision-making bodies, which in this case would be the hearing examiner of the Metropolitan Development Commission. She will make a recommendation to the full Metropolitan Development Commission, which is our plan commission, and then the Metropolitan Development Commission ultimately sends every rezoning to the city county council. This is the area that we're talking about. You can see that we are bound Troy on the north, Davis on the east, a little bit of Vandergriff at kind of the angle, and then running along the frontage and then along Post Road. So it's a pretty big chunk of property, no question about it. As mentioned, before CS zoning was chosen, these are some of the bullet points that are found in the principles of the CS zoning district in the preamble. It allows for just a more creative way to land plan. In this particular case, because we have a couple of ditches to the north and south, it allows us to work within those parameters, internalize the development, and create what we think is a really good design, and we'll get into that on the next slide. But this is, let's go to the table, Matt. These are the standards. So the CS requirement has a minimum amount of street frontage of 50 feet. We're way beyond that. Setbacks, off of 74 is only 10 feet. Off of Post, it's 10 feet. The maximum setback is 85 feet. We exceed all of those. And we're asking for a variance of the maximum setback, because what we've done is we've provided, as you can see here and here, a minimum 150-foot buffer yard that is on the perimeter of Troy, Davis, and Vandergriff. That is well in excess of the standards at CS. It's well in excess of the industrial standards. We do have a maximum building height of 75 feet, whereas the CS standard is 45 feet. So this is the conceptual plan that we're showing. You can see the setbacks and buffers. You can see, is it the Miller ditch that's up top, or the Fisher ditch up front? We're not doing anything to the north of that. We've talked to the city. It's a regulated drain. It's in the stream protection corridor. We're meeting all of our obligations to stay out of it, and we're developing to the south of that. As you can see, these are data center buildings. Not all will be built at the same time. A lot of the ultimate development depends upon the amount of power that will become available to the site and the amount of water that becomes available to the site, all of which is being investigated as part of due diligence. AES will build a substation in the middle of the property here, which will then feed smaller ones that serve these buildings. This building is an office building that supports the data center buildings. And the pink corridors are those feeders for the utilities to the data center site. So you can see we've got in green shown here our buffer areas that are shown. This is a little diagram of what that looks like. These are going to be mounded with 10 to 15 foot tall berms, landscaping on top. We believe that that will provide a significant screening and buffering, particularly over as the plantings grow over time, all designed to protect our neighbors, residential neighbors to the perimeter. Let's go to the next one. So we talked about Fitcher ditch. We know that that's in the floodway and 100-year floodplain. We're staying out of that. We will have to do in some fill of the floodplain. We will meet all the compensatory storage requirements. Miller Ditch runs to the south of the site. Both run it east-west. So again, we have met with DPW, Department of Business and Neighborhood Services, just to talk about what development should take place within that area. As you can see, we're really trying to avoid development that impacts those two areas. Next slide. So, post road entry, this will be temporary and then permanent. We don't know for sure. There could be an entrance to Davis, from Davis Road for construction purposes and or emergency access and for emergency equipment down the road. That is still something that's being worked on with the city of Indianapolis. Most of all of you know that there's a roundabout project being proposed at Troy and Post. We will and have been engaging with DPW in terms of the scope of the traffic study, and that will be worked on as we go through this process. Believe it or not, this is not a heavy traffic generating use. This is not a warehouse project where you're gonna have semis coming in all the time, 24/7. This is, once construction is complete, it will be mostly passenger traffic, and there will be some, but not nearly the typical amount of industrial truck type traffic. So we've done a few. One of the other issues that we believe that you've heard about or read about is noise. As mentioned, one of the things that we're doing to kind of mitigate that is to provide that enhanced setback and buffer with those 10 to 15 foot berms and vegetative screening. That will help. We will also study the actual noise, both ambient and then what we produce to model the site and assure that we are meeting whatever. The Indianapolis standard is kind of vague. It just says you can't produce noise that would injure adjoining property. So we intend to meet all of our performance standards, including noise and everything else. And then there's lighting that kind of goes hand in hand with that. There is actually a 2-foot candle at the perimeter standard max. We will not exceed that. All of our lights are full cutoff, right? All of our lights are full cutoff shields. So, next slide. These are some images, just basically taking a grade of the current condition. This is from the north east corner of the property at Davis and Troy, looking back to the south and west. That's what you see today. This is what things will look like in a few years. You can see the fencing is not industrial style fencing. The perimeter fencing is basically more decorative. It's not really a security fence at all. There is internal security fencing, but that is not what any of you as neighbors will see. You kind of see the diagram and the berming. You can see, if you look real hard, kind of the building between these trees over here. So that's what we think. This is kind of an overhead view of that. Image was taken. This is at Troy, kind of in the middle of the property. You can see, obviously, there's farm structures up today. Go flash forward into the future, and you can see kind of the same image. Shouldn't be able to really even see anything. We're going to be set back pretty far, obviously, south of the ditch, no matter how many buildings are built. This is Post Road, looking back. So Post Road is probably the least sensitive for most of you in terms of buffering, because there's already commercial and industrial traffic and uses. This is what the intent of the buffering would look like, kind of at that northwest corner. And this is Vandergriff, which is kind of how it bends down towards the south. That's the existing condition, looking back north, northwest, and that's what you can expect to see down the road. So, go to the next one. So, we'll just summarize again very briefly. This case is a zoning case that seeks a CS zoning, which means that it will be subject to the development statement that is on file. It's probably not finalized because we've got to engage with the public and with the planning staff. There will likely be what we call zoning commitments. Done enough cases out here to know that we can get away with not having them, which will put a lot of what you see into writing. Like, for example, we will have a minimum berm of 10 feet or something along those lines. And those types of things end up being part of zoning commitments. Those get recorded against the property, meaning that no matter what happens, as long as that CS zoning is in place and being used, then those commitments apply. So you just can't transfer the property out of the commitments. They actually get recorded against the property. Again, we had already programmed tonight being an informational introduction. We know we'll be back a couple more times, so feel free to take a deep breath. And if we don't get to everybody's question tonight, there will be opportunities. And the next time we come back, we hope that we are able to answer questions that we can't tonight. We have a pretty good idea of everything, but obviously we don't know everything. Do you want to have the committee first or community first?
We're gonna have the community first.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna move into the question and answer period. Before we do that, just as a show of hands, this does sit on the Franklin Township, Warren Township borderline, so it impacts both townships directly. If you are from Warren Township, can I see a show of hands? If you are from Franklin Township. If you are just here because you had nothing else to do today. Also, I do want to mention that, can I see a show of hands for people whose properties are either directly across the street from this or whose properties directly touch this? So you can kind of see who your audience is.
Yep. I saw on the sign-up sheet a lot of Davis and a lot of Vandergriff.
Yes. I will tell you that the email addresses that you put on the sign-up sheet, I do not share those with anybody without your permission, so if you sign up on that email address list, I'm not gonna spread your email around, just so you will know. With that, we are gonna open it up for questions from the community. And I'm gonna do my best to try and recognize everybody. Please be patient with me. Nancy?
Sir, I will hope my questions be really quick answers. The letter that was received, by one friend on Davis Road listed the homes to which it was sent. There were 4 houses on Troy, 4 on Post, 3 on Davis, and only 1 on Vandergriff. The other 15 houses along Vandergriff, whose backyards back up to this property, were they notified?
I didn't bring my affidavit of notice with me. Just so you know, the city of Indianapolis prepares the notice list. And those who are entitled to notice are owners within 2 ownerships deep, properties deep, or 660 feet, whichever comes first. So when there's residential, there should be everybody that's across the street. And then typically going 1 parcel deep beyond that. Plus city councilors, neighborhood organizations, and everybody else that's entitled to receive notice, but the parameters.
Since so many weren't listed on the.
You can contact the city planner if you have a question about who got notice, or if you want me to do it, I will do it. If you wanna contact the city planner directly, her name is Marlene Irahita, sorry. She can be reached at 317-327-5374 or at marleheta@indy.gov. That is the city planner. That is assigned by DMD to review the petition on behalf of the city. But like I said, if you'd like to contact me, we will find out who got notice, okay?
Thank you, that's it.
I couldn't get another question.
You said this would be city water, so it's not gonna affect those of us in Wells.
Correct, no impact on
And
Wells.
the last 2 questions, what was the type of light? You said something about a cutoff light?
If you look at a light that's on the exterior and you see a hood coming down and then
So it's
the light
downshoot only.
source within
Yeah.
it is within that circumference of that, light fixture, that's cut off.
So it's downshoot
Yeah,
only.
it's meant to avoid light spill.
Okay, the last question I had, and those of us who live in the area will be familiar with this. That area, that photo you showed of Vandergriff Road, whenever there's a heavy rainstorm, that is underwater for days, sometimes weeks. What mitigation can be done so that that water that currently stands in that field, once you pave it, doesn't end up in our houses?
We drove by tonight, so before the meeting, so we saw it. We are actively looking into that with the storm outfall options and helping to mitigate that. That is a jurisdictional wetland, that has been delineated. So we're gonna try to work around it. Part of that is maintaining flow to it, but also, again, part of this is also understanding that's this exact point of flooding issues and trying to mitigate that with anything we do.
And all of this site will be designed in accordance with Indianapolis standards, which basically provide requirements for that, so you aren't overwhelming an outfall or making a situation worse. Like I said, the goal would be to make it better.
Do you know what the classification of the wetlands is?
Not yet, we have not gotten the final determination.
Okay, one of the gentlemen right up here in the front with a ball cap, and I don't know which one of you raised your hand.
I did, but, you kinda already touched on some of my questions. I live in the northwest corner, the very first house that was excluded. We have well water, and we were concerned about the well water contamination, of course. And then the, buffer zone, we had, a couple, and my neighbors as well had some questions about, will it be maintained, who's gonna maintain it, what's gonna be planted? And there's some structures that's gonna be in it. Will those structures be taken out immediately? And this be part of it, or will they be allowed to fall down and like for years until this gets done.
We have a farmhouse directly next to
Oh.
us with their outbuildings, and that's what we're concerned with. It's gonna be
They've got a
built, it's
dozen
gonna
or so
dilapidate,
structures.
it's
Okay.
gonna be torn down.
Is this the one on post?
Yes, sir.
We're right on the corner of the Central.
You're saying these ones right here?
Yes, so
Yes,
we're right
sir.
there by
Okay.
40, 43.
I think our intent would be that they would be coming down with the buffer.
Okay.
Or if we wanna keep them for aesthetics, we can pull the buffer back, I mean, so.
The,
We want them.
the
Okay.
buffer has to be maintained by us, by the developer, operator, under the ordinance. Typically, we're asked to put that in writing as a commitment as well, which includes replacement of dead, dying trees and things like that. So ultimately, the city is probably gonna want a mixture of tree types. Sometimes neighbors say, we really want this skewed towards evergreens. So we'll listen to what you all, particularly those who are joining us, really want, and we'll work within those requests.
And then, I guess just as to your question about the well water, like, the Citizens Energy Group will be providing water, so there won't be any wells on the site. As far as discharges go, any water that's used would be going to a sanitary system to a treatment, so there wouldn't be any direct discharge.
Yeah, my immediate concern was the chemicals used to
Treat the wastewater.
if it's not agriculturally safe and you're putting it out, and I'm drinking the water that's hungry, that was my concern.
Yeah, so all of that, any water that's used is gonna be sent to a treatment facility and not gonna be discharged on site.
Okay, I'll continue. There was a gentleman back here, yes, with the beard and glasses.
Will your presentation be available to us online to study?
I can email it to you if you'd like.
Okay, did you get my email address?
Yes, I have it.
Okay, he'll send it to me and then I'll send it to anybody that asks for it,
Thank you.
okay? Okay, we're gonna go here and then over here.
I got two questions. So first off, thanks for putting this together. I think you just showed us the 50,000 foot view. You didn't really give us the whole picture, I don't think. You didn't say how long construction would take for this.
So, construction, so it's a phase, so initially would just be the first phase, and it's about 18 to 24 months, construction for that first phase. And that would be one building, that you see there's 4 on here. The rate at which they're built is dependent upon the demand for them. But it could be 5 to 10 years for full build.
So you're saying I have to live across the street for possibly 10 years of construction?
Well, it's not all day, every day for 10 years.
Yeah, I guess from the start to full build out could be up to 10 years, but it wouldn't necessarily mean that it's 10 years of construction.
But there's gonna be groundwork for 10 years. There's gonna be jackhammering every once in a while, ground movement, correct?
I mean, the full build out of the project could be, yeah, it could be that timeframe.
So-
It depends on demand, as well as
It wouldn't be, this is a huge site, as you can imagine, so let's say we were just doing a regular industrial park, and you start out with one building, and it's a build-to-suit that you know, and you've got land for other build-to-suit opportunities, it's just gonna take time.
I understand.
We understand.
Kind of follow up, we sent out a large group of questions, and I don't think barely any of those were answered in this information. When will either yourself or Deep Ventures LLC answer that question?
Well, it's a little overwhelming to go through all of that.
But you
for
should have been
tonight.
prepared for this
So,
meeting, correct?
We are prepared. We wanted to, this is an introduction, so those questions that you all have here tonight live, we will answer. And we will,
So you're gonna work on the list that you
yeah,
got
we've
sent.
already started working on it. It was a pretty long list.
And so one other follow-up,
But you're welcome to
When?
ask from that list, so.
just one other question, do not take any disrespect to this. Would you raise a family living with this in your front yard or backyard?
Would
Look at
I
us in
raise
the
a
eyes
family?
and tell us that.
Look,
That's a question that is often asked, and we're gonna skip over that for now. I understand, but
I
The
will
answer is
tell
no.
you one experience about where I did
I-
live at one time, and it was my fault.
I have
because
12 acres of property, this is gonna ruin.
I understand, but please understand this.
And would you like to
As
buy my
mentioned-
property?
Okay, let me answer the question.
As mentioned, this property has been planned for industrial use, and I'm sorry if you weren't aware of that or that it doesn't make sense. So we're not taking a dart and saying, we're gonna jam this in next to people that don't want it, and this is supposed to be residential subdivision. It's just not. I did have an experience where I bought a house and I didn't pay attention to the thoroughfare plan, and guess what? Traffic like quadrupled. I get it, it's tough. Same thing here, this is just, it's a reflection of what the comprehensive plan suggests for this site, so we're gonna do the very best we can to mitigate concerns that any of you have about the impact of this development upon your property.
Have you and I been communicating by email?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I thought
That's
so.
Andrew.
My name's Andrew Filler.
Okay,
So-
I'm gonna go here and then I'll come over here. And then
Actually, I
we'll
should
go
have it
back.
tied in. Could
Well, no, I'm sorry, I gotta go in order.
Okay.
First of all, I want to address critical area 003. This neighborhood group that has been involved, Greater Troy Neighborhood Association, has been very involved with the comprehensive plan for 20 years. So we do have a clue what the comprehensive plan says. And it says, part of it already, should include a land buffer demonstratively sufficient in size to significantly mitigate any light, noise, or visual intrusion to adjacent properties.
Agreed.
It also says, will stimulate jobs and a balanced property tax. You haven't talked at all about all the abatements, tax incentives, not having to pay sales tax on all this equipment and everything, and whether or not we're gonna end up paying for the AES substation through all of our utility bills.
We can tell you this, Jennifer, you as a neighbor and a taxpayer will not be paying for the substation. All the stuff that's needed to support this project will be paid for by the developer. And yes, there are tax abatements that the state gives on the equipment. And yes, there will likely be some sort of real property tax abatement. But keep in mind, that gets phased out over time, and with this investment, there will be significant economic benefit to this community. This is something that I've heard after bringing many, many residential subdivisions through the past number of years. When are we gonna get commercial? When are we gonna get industrial? So, we would be no different than any other industrial developer that would look to this site. Every single industrial developer would ask for a tax abatement. All you have to do is look up further north on Post and Pepsi and the other developments, those are all abated. But that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. That brings those opportunities to that neighborhood as well as this neighborhood.
Okay, so we move on, I wanna correct one thing you said. You said that this goes with the comprehensive plan. There's about 80 acres on Davis Road, connected to, Troy and Vandergriff, that on the comprehensive plan show it to be the lowest density of housing.
Understood, and if
you're
you,
saying that that was okay, and in the critical area, you said there were no, exceptions. Yes, truck stops are exempt from.
so
using
we're not
that
doing
stuff.
that, we're not, fine, you're
Just
absolutely,
correcting you.
you are correct, Jennifer. There was truck fueling stations were, taken out as a use removed, my fault on that. So as you can see, we're not developing anything, at that northeast corner.
Right here's what I'm talking about. All of this is supposed to be the lowest density of housing. And everybody in Greater Troy on the email list has copies of the comprehensive plan. They're pretty educated.
And I think I mentioned that the Davis Road frontage was residential, yes, I did mention that. So,
Okay, we're gonna move over here, the young lady's sitting in the closet.
Yeah.
And then there's a gentleman back there that has a beard and kind of a gray shirt, and I think glasses on top of your head. You'll be next, and then the hand that's up, that's got a kind of a denim shirt, and I can't see what the face is attached to.
Okay, forgive me for not standing up, I've just got stuff on my lap. So, to tie into his question, you said that you're working on the list of 60 or so questions. Is there a date that you can commit to for accountability purposes, or even a general time frame? I hate to leave it so ambiguous.
we will have those all answered on or before the next Franklin Township,
So this-
Civic League 16th.
Which is April 16th.
Okay.
If we can do it sooner, we will. Full disclosure, I will be out of town on vacation next week, so that puts us into that first week of April, so I don't think we'll have it pulled
Yeah, I
together
just
for April 2nd.
appreciate a date for
Yeah.
accountability purposes.
Here's another addition to your list of questions.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna really quickly, so I know they need generators to make sure that if there's ever a power outage,
Right.
the power stays on. Now, typically, those are diesel fuel driven, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so how much diesel fuel are they planning to keep on site, and how are they planning to store it?
So everything is in belly tanks, and then the generators are just.
What are belly tanks?
Basically the generator sits up top and you got a tank underneath it for the diesel,
So it's all above ground?
all above ground, not one big storage tank. Basically the generators are intended for obviously the emergency use. They will test them by code, you have to test them per week, and they will alternate that in sequences so that not all of them are turning on. And then the whole process of when they do actually turn on is only for a certain period of time. They're not trying to operate the entire building off of generator power for the foreseeable future. That's just a transitional period.
Okay, and is that something, like, the timeframes for that, can that be built into the zoning commitments that you mentioned? And then how are the zoning commitments enforced?
Well, they are enforced by, we typically name the Civic League, and then folks that are within the notice period or in the form are automatically benefited parties. The reality is this: if something bad happens and we fail to live up to a commitment, it's typically the Department of Business and Neighborhood Services who does code enforcement that will come out and cite a violation. They're pretty hefty fines, injunctive relief, etc. Sometimes it can be pretty ticky-tack, and sometimes it could be significant. So in other words, I've had clients that, you put your landscaping on the inside of your fence instead of the outside. Well, guess what? You have to deal with that. So that wasn't a major deal, but the code inspector saw it, so they read those commitments very carefully.
And we will limit the time that we test the generators.
How
Typically,
much time?
during the day hours.
No, I mean, how long do they run?
I specifically don't know how long they actually run them, but I know
You
that
said once a week you'll be testing one?
each one, and it's once a week, each one tests for a period of time.
Oh,
And then,
so once a week and not once a month,
correct.
He said once a week,
for all of them?
yes. Each
They have
of
to
them has
cycle
to be
through, yes.
tested once a week, but they won't all be tested at one time.
So
Do you
each
have
of
any other
them, once a
questions?
week, how many, cause I mean,
Okay, that's a
Again, that's
question
rather
that you're gonna,
arbitrary,
that's a
so it
question
could-
that you
Yeah,
should put
we'll
on the
work
list
on it,
and
yeah.
find out.
decided you're playing the numbers there, it could be literally 24/7 potentially with
Well,
that
I'd say
information.
the number of them is ultimately gonna be dependent on the technology, and that could change from one building to one building as there's new technology available, more efficiency. But all of that's gonna be accounted for when we're looking at the noise for the site, is gonna account for those generators.
Okay, the gentleman that is back, okay, we have the gentleman that is with the glasses on the top and the beard, then there's a lady that, is up here, and then all the way in the back, the gentleman in the green jacket and ball cap. So sir, you are first, yes, sir.
Okay, you mentioned that there'd be a percentage of spill into the ditch, right, Fisher ditch?
As
You
far
mentioned
as,
that there'd be percentage of spill into the Fisher ditch.
as far as the development, as far
Yeah,
as,
after the development's done, there'd be some spill into the
So
ditch. My
this
concern
storm
is.
discharge.
so we would have
Storm discharge from the
storm
pond.
discharge from the pond.
So that ditch with the efficient for that piece of property, but it also is conjunctive to the property north of Davis. That neighborhood has issues with water. And if you start filling that ditch with a percentage that ditch already can't handle, that's my concern. And I just want, I'm sure you guys will do a complete survey when that comes out. But as you drive out, you might wanna go up Davis Road and see a couple folks' houses,
Yeah.
just north of Troy there.
So-
North of Troy.
I guess a couple things with that. One, you know, as far as the development, you know, extending into that ditch, we will have, we aren't developing anything north of the ditch. That's where we'll be providing basically with pet storage, which, so anything that we do that impacts that floodplain, we basically offset that by creating that much storage on the north side.
So you'll grade it out so that.
Exactly, and then as far as, you know, the discharge, so with the regulations, really the purpose of the regulations is so that you are not increasing what's getting to that ditch. So, there's not a negative impact to upstream or downstream, and we'll be complying with all those regulations, and you can see kind of on this site plan, these areas, I'm assuming they're in blue.
Yep.
Kind of colorblind, but anyway, these would be basins that would be controlling any of the runoff and releasing at a slow rate into that ditch.
And then my second real quick question is, you said this might be a 5 to 7 year.
Sir, I'm
build.
sorry, could you talk a little bit louder?
My second question might be that this is a 5 to 7 year build, but the perimeter skirting is gonna be done first, right?
So right now, the reason we had the renderings from Troy, with the berm coming later, so you can kind of see from the Troy perspective, from a day one, over time, we will build that out. We're intending to do the west and the east first,
In the south.
and portion of the south of the substation.
Okay, I'm so sorry, but we need to kind of keep in order, so,
We will, we will
And I don't think you saw
take that
me,
back
but.
though.
I did, but.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there was a lady here with kind of a denim, yes, you.
And my question is, I live on Vandergriff Road, and every time we get a downpour of rain on the end of the property, the farm property, that water goes over into a pond, which they put in years ago to kind of help with the water situation. And now, and after that, it goes all the way about 4 or 5 houses, and it's so bad, they can't get in their driveways, and it's actually gone up to their doors. What is gonna be done to rectify that?
So as part of the stormwater solution, obviously, if we drove by it tonight, we're gonna take.
Hey, that ain't slow down.
Yeah, it's very
I saw that.
Okay, I'm sorry, let him answer the question, but you do need to speak up.
Okay, so as part of that overall stormwater solution down there, that's what we will be looking at from a downstream outlet perspective. So from what I saw tonight, there's a solution, or not a solution, but there's an issue that we need to investigate further with our design, as well as obviously alleviate something else that's downstream of us to help benefit everybody. So we need to explore it more, can't give you an answer right now, but we will take it back.
Second
Okay,
question.
okay.
There is a wooded area back on that property, and there's a lot of wildlife that goes through there, deer and everything else. Are you gonna be taking down all of those trees to put in your?
You're talking between the 2 eastern buildings?
The correct answer would be no.
This is talking about next to the substation.
So, what I can say for right now is we are actively doing a tree survey to figure out what is in there, what implications there would be, as we expand further to the east. We are building west to east is how we are intending to do this. Technology changes, footprints change for buildings, that sort of thing. Obviously, we're trying to keep up with efficiency and changing technology, so, the buildings could become smaller, or they could be bigger, I don't know. It's just, every week is different in the industry, so, we're just trying to document what is there and plan accordingly as we kind of phase out and work our way out to the east.
Okay, all the way to the neck, the jumbo ball cap. I'm sorry,
It's the gentleman in the back.
were you yielding the floor to her? Okay, got it.
Thanks, Jordan.
I have two questions. Your equipment is gonna be obsolete at some point. What are you planning to do with your e-waste?
E-waste.
E-waste.
What do you do when it
E-waste,
comes
when the
defective
buildings
or?
or the equipment become obsolete?
So, from our client's perspective, and this kind of goes to some of the questions on the sheet, I believe. So, they have owned and operated all their campuses. They have campuses that are 15 years plus and no signs of them diminishing or being phased out. They will progressively phase out old equipment and bring in new technology. That's both inside the buildings and outside the buildings.
That is, as far as that, I don't know the answer. That's something we can take back as far as what they do with that old equipment.
Okay, then my second question was, you know, these data centers use a lot of water to flush through, to cool things down. And in that cooling process, they pick up a lot of metals and things possibly like arsenic. You said that water that was gonna be discharged was gonna be off-site. Where is it going and who's paying to filter it? Or is there any paying to filter it?
So as far as, I guess, the first question was water usage, we're working with Citizens Energy Group, but as far as the technology that would be used for cooling these buildings, there's air-cooled technology, there is water-cooled technology. That's gonna be dependent on what technology is available and what, water is available. So that's kind of the first part of that. As far as the discharge, so as it's used, it does pick up, it does become contaminated water. That's where it would go, to the sewer, to a sewer treatment plant.
Is that on site?
No, that would not be on site, and ultimately, any improvements that are required as part of this project would pay for.
So, so we will be discharging to the sanitary sewer on Davis that feeds basically existing wastewater treatment facilities that Citizens owns. A lot of times with the processed water that is used to cool, it's just the cycle of concentration that increases. A lot of wastewater treatment plants almost complain that our water's too clean when it actually gets their system because they like the bugs in the wastewater treatment plant. So Citizens has already confirmed that our amount of discharge and everything else will not mess up their system. And so that processed discharge will then just go by gravity feed like any other toilet or sink or anything else to the same place that everyone else's goes.
Okay, hold on just a second, we gotta go in order. Who was it that was speaking back there in a real soft voice just a minute ago? It was a woman, I think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that her?
Who? Show me your hand, I gotta see it.
I think that was.
Yeah, that was.
Okay, all right. Okay, then we're gonna go up here and then we'll go to the gentleman here with the glasses and.
Yes, and maybe I misunderstood, but I'm a firm believer in fairness and exposure. And I think you said that you couldn't give us the exact name of this company. I'd like to know the name of the company and their address, so we can look into it and find out about the company.
I
It's a
can't.
shell company that started.
As their
6 months
attorney,
ago.
I have a duty of confidentiality, so I cannot.
Can you tell us how many people have signed those disclosures of confidentiality?
NDAs.
I don't know.
That's not fair, that's not exposure, that's not giving us anything to look into. I disagree with that totally.
I
If you're gonna do business-
appreciate you bringing
Yeah.
that.
If you're gonna do business with a company, you need to know what the company's about.
Understood. And like we said, during the due diligence phase, we're not allowed to disclose that.
Joe, if you could go back and, I understand the confidentiality thing, but if you could go back and convey to your client that lack of transparency is going to work against them. I think the community would appreciate them understanding
Yep,
that
we'll take
quite
that back,
clearly.
yeah.
Okay, there's a gentleman right here.
I know myself, Jonathan Skillman, Ray Skillman, he's my employer over at Manheim. We've been fighting Comcast for at least over 10 years on getting better internet. And the fact that you guys are a data center, you need so much bandwidth. Are you finally gonna get Comcast to lay different lines, or is it gonna be a whole new company altogether? And how much is the new internet gonna be available to everyone in the area?
What we can say right now is they're coordinating with multiple providers. They have lines in varying locations around this area.
Because currently, there's only AT&T, which only offers DSL on post, and Comcast, but literally like 2 blocks over toward Ferguson or Hannah, you can get fiber, but Comcast will not allow it on this road because they own poles, lines, and everything else. So I'm just curious how you guys want to navigate that to run.
Yeah, there will be one or multiple providers to and from the campus. It's not yet known where they're coming from or who they will be, but there will be additional telecommunication lines coming to feed the data centers.
Okay, there's a lady here in glasses, then there's a lady back here, and then I see an arm up back here that's got the man with the blue sweatshirt. So that'll be, half the people in the room. Okay, right here with the glasses. You right there. You what?
That gentleman.
You missed him.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, him. Oh, no, I saw his hand, he just wasn't next. But if they're willing to let you go next, let's go with it.
It's fine. Question about environmental studies, the wetlands, what kind of sustainability the campus is gonna have? Is there solar, is it geothermal, is there anything that is actually helping?
So in most instances, I mean, we're gonna get our power from AES. And so as far as on-site from a solar and wind perspective, typically that does not generate enough for us to use at the data centers themselves. Now, AES may have a separate project off-site somewhere that they're going to do that may help support this project, don't know. That's part of the MISO market and how they get the power to us.
Linked to that briefly, there was recently legislation passed that would permit at small nuclear facilities on site. Do you have any intention to use that?
At this point, I have no idea.
Did you have another question then?
Okay,
The wildlife, like, are you guys looking at the environmental impacts?
Yeah, so we're doing all the due diligence that we typically see. We're doing threatened and endangered species studies, we are doing wetland delineation studies, phase 1 environmental studies, geotechnical studies, everything, all the above. They're still in process. And we're submitting them to the appropriate agencies, obviously in advance of any sort of permits that would be required or anything of that nature.
Is that something that is then available to the public as well?
Once it goes to
Once it
the
goes to the
agency,
agency,
then
it
it's
becomes
gonna be a
public
public record, once it goes to the agency.
Yeah, I think that's considered intellectual property that they are not under duress to disclose until they submit it to the public agencies.
Because we're talking about noise and light, but those are impacts, not just residents, but wildlife and such, which is a concern. And we'd like to know those questions as well.
Okay, yes, the lady right there with your hand, that's you.
Yeah, can we confirm, are we talking about an AI data center versus just a regular data center? What are we,
So,
this it makes a difference, I mean, I don't know if people know, it makes a difference.
We can say it's not a Bitcoin.
Well, that would really make a difference.
It's not a mining
I mean,
operation.
if we're talking about an AI data center, the usage of electricity, water will make a large difference. It also is not gonna employ as many people, so when we talk about what it brings to our community, it's going to bring a lot less. So are we confirming we're talking about an AI data center, or are you going to be vague and not tell us?
at this point, we just don't know. I mean, it's the way the nature of the business goes and the various other due diligence efforts that we're going through.
Can you tell us how many people were thinking about being employed in the first phase?
So-
Not
when it's
construction, you're talking about once it's built?
Yes.
Yeah, after completion, during operation, it'll be about 100 jobs.
So we're talking AI data center then, because that's
Yeah.
gonna be an AI data
Not
center.
necessarily.
What can you
Do
tell us?
we, so I
Per
assume
building,
in the
100
questions,
per building. so there's four, it'd be 400.
How many buildings?
They're programming 4 if the power is available.
Okay, I'm sorry, there was
So
somebody
the
over.
wages would be about 100,000 per job. So it's not a small, insignificant amount of revenue that's gonna be associated.
Okay, the gentleman, or the lady, I'm sorry, oh, Addie, I'm sorry, recognize you, and then we'll go hear this gentleman.
So, as far as elevation of the property, what it is now, we've talked to that, we have well, and you say it's not gonna affect it. We have a very high water table here, I'm on a jet pump. Any construction affects it. My well has been affected multiple times with the massive construction that's gone on here recently, and it's nowhere near this. What's your planned elevation of completion? And, how much of the property will be in non-permeable surfaces, including gravel, cause you think it's not, and it is?
So overall impervious surface, we're typically a lot less than a typical like trucking facility or something of that nature where, obviously we have big buildings, but it's hard to say, it's hard to say right now. We will definitely be within the stormwater ordinance at this point. And we're typically a high impervious use with structural stormwater BMPs, that we're designing.
50%, 70%, 90%?
At this point, I would say 75% tops.
It's non-permeable?
Non-permeable.
Yep.
Of the 400, almost 500 acres, 75%
And that's
non-permeable surface?
probably on the high side, but that's what I can say right now.
With wetlands attached that are and flooding. My other question is, we sent I know we've talked about, we sent, an email with multiple questions, you don't have it available, I understand there's a lot to go through. They have said that there's gonna be a continuance, will you be filing the continuance since you do not have the answers for us at the meeting? You said you doing multiple studies. In my opinion, I'm assuming most of the people here agree, when you bring this for a board, that you should be prepared to present the day that it's done. You should have that information already for us to be able to do.
Yeah.
So will you be filing the
Appreciate
petition?
that. No, we are not filing the continuance. Civic League has already indicated they will.
You're the petitioner and don't have the answers
Well,
for us to be able
we
to make
have
an
all the
educated
zoning
decision.
answers that are needed for a decision. We don't have every single operational answer that has been thrown out, because that's not always part of the zoning. We know that people like to understand every last detail, but zoning is the first part of any sort of gateway to get the project done. We have to do this first, and we're running the rest of the due diligence concurrently. That's very normal in the development world.
It's
very
not,
normal.
because everybody wants to know what's going on with the property next to
Okay,
them.
Addie, I
appreciate where
understand
you're coming from.
entirely, but what I do need to make clear is, under the current zoning procedures for Marion County, they're not even required to be here this evening. They're not required to meet with the community. Whether you think that's fair or not, that's how it goes. There is a chance that the city might choose to file for a continuance, but the petitioner's not going to.
They should be
We are.
prepared for answers before they bring it up.
Okay.
We need to call our city council people.
Just a couple questions. You said that, in the documents I got, you guys applied for a variance to raise the height of the building height from 38 to 75 feet tall?
45 to 75.
45 to 75, okay. That's not really commensurable with the neighborhood. It's all 1 and 2 story homes, so these are kind of tower over.
Yeah, we know that, and, you know, what I would say to that is that, may not ever get to 75 feet, it may only be a water tower type of structure, it may not be, the buildings typically aren't that tall. We're just trying to guess for what the future might hold that way, and within the comprehensive plan, when they talk about light industrial, which does have a little higher, ceiling height attenuant to it, you know, when we internalize the development and buffer around the perimeter, that typically allows for height variance. You saw some of the images we provided we're not intending on overwhelming our neighbors to the perimeter, so. The other setback, the other variance is so we can actually increase the setbacks. Indianapolis, in its infinite wisdom, has maximum setbacks for a lot of commercial districts. So we asked for a variance so we could shut these, buildings and increase the perimeter buffer yard, so.
Could I make one comment real quick?
Yes.
When you look at that proposed site plan, the building that is furthest east is definitely in that area that would propose suburban homes. You might consider reorienting or moving that building so it's not right so close.
And the substation, that'll be in my backyard.
So, my second question was, is there any planned modifications to Post Road? If you're gonna employ 400, possibly 400 people, there's gonna be a lot of congestion in this area. It's just a 2-lane road right now, and it gets pretty backed up, especially across the bridge going on and off I-74.
No doubt. So we've had an initial scoping meeting for the traffic study with the city and Indiana DOT to date, so we are completing that memorandum of understanding, and then we will go out and start doing the traffic study, which will indicate improvements required based upon traffic rules.
Could I pause and say this? If you have particular details about the traffic on that road that you wanna make sure to be considered for the scope of the traffic study, the city generally sets those standards, but occasionally they will expand those standards if the community brings something in particular to your attention. So if you got specifics about that area, send them to me very quickly so that we can get them to the planner to be considered.
And then my last question, is kind of going back to the sound question that everybody has talked about. So when do you do those studies to find out, the limited research I've done, it says you guys will be emitting anywhere from 60 to 100 decibels. Is that inside the building? How much of that, and it's outside the building? Where are the studies, where will they be conducted? Do you do them on the corner of the property?
Yeah, do them at property line.
Yeah. And so a lot of the times, so we're in the rezoning stage, we're in the due diligence stage, we're seeing this out as far as obviously we want to be here at this property. So as part of that is, the next step is final engineering, equipment selection, what's gonna go inside the building, that sort of thing. All that kind of dictates water cooled, air cooled, different components of the noise study. So all that goes into, the noise specialist puts that into the computer and analyzes it and projects that out based upon topography as well as your proximity.
Okay, I'm gonna take the gentleman over here, the lady right here, and then this lady, and then we're gonna pause because we're reaching the end of our time so that the land use committee can ask questions if they want to. So you're first.
You mentioned that you will be seeking a property tax, a real property tax abatement. How long do you plan for that abatement to be, and do you think that's appropriate with the amount of pushback to not contribute right away for the land?
Those are all things that are done by a different team. I'm just on the zoning team. So, the city actually does their own analysis and cost-benefit analysis before they make any offer of abatement. I can only tell you that there's been conversations, there's nothing on file as of now in terms of application for abatement. These are just all conversations that are taking place as part of the overall project. So the city makes the recommendation to the Metropolitan Development Commission as to length, phase out, all that kind of stuff. So the state, on the other hand, has the abatement on the equipment on the inside that has nothing to do with the zoning. That's just something the state has decided that it wants to use to lever these types of projects and these types of investments.
You're talking about sales tax?
Personal property tax.
As I understand it, there are also statutes in place that would exempt you from sales tax on purchases going forward, so is that anything?
That could be,
they
I
look
don't
at?
know, that's a good question, I don't know the answer to that,
Water and
but I
energy
can find
usage.
out.
Okay, right here.
How are your water basins going to affect our wells?
So all of our water's coming from the potable water source, and so as far as from a stormwater perspective, we're pulling water from a potable water source versus the aquifer. And so we're discharging to the streams as it would any other situation.
But won't those be filled with groundwater rather than?
The ponds?
Yes.
No, they're, I mean,
Surface water.
surface water. So the surface water from the impervious areas, the buildings and everything else will flow to those ponds. Will be separated from all of the groundwater because we don't want to, we're not promoting on the infiltration or anything, and then we will discharge to the stream.
The current drainage code says basically that they are not supposed to send water off of the property any faster or in any greater quantity than it goes now. That's what the code says. And if they build it properly, you may see some relief, especially that sheet drainage that comes across Vandergriff Road. We can talk in later meetings about how that could be monitored.
I'm just wondering if those ponds that you're, or basins that you're digging, is that gonna take groundwater away from our wells?
No, if anything, we'll seal them off so it doesn't.
And then my other question is, are the farmhouses on Troy going to be torn down?
At this point, no, I can't say one way or another. I mean, we're purchasing the property.
Do you want them gone?
You want them gone? No. I mean, I know you got, I know which ones you got.
Yeah, you want them one.
Well, if it's a buffer, it's not an abandoned building.
Yeah, we just don't want an abandoned house sitting
Right.
there.
What
And
I
it's
think-
only if it is abandoned.
Right.
I think part of it is, in the past, sometimes homes have been attached to the property, but they just sit there empty and they're not monitored and they become an attractive nuisance to people in the area.
Yeah,
And we've had a
we get
couple of
that.
fires from empty homes, and I
Yes.
don't think anybody wants that.
No.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the lady up here. You get the last question from the community for right now.
Okay,
Make it a good one.
The data centers, emit electromagnetic frequency, EMF. What's a typical reading coming off of your existing buildings from your client? We can't hear.
EMF.
She asked about what the typical, it's electromagnetic fields, what the typical, they're called EMFs, what the typical EMF readings are from these facilities.
Okay.
We'll get that answer. We
Yeah,
don't know.
we need that answer.
We don't.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna go now to, if the land use committee has any questions, and then we're gonna talk about next steps. So,
So, first question, you plan on using any geothermal, cooling?
Not
either
currently,
through
no.
wells or?
You guys need to speak up there.
okay, he was asking, don't leave yet if you wanna know when the next meeting is gonna be.
He asked if there was going to be geothermal cooling used, and Brian's response
At this
was no.
point, no.
That's not one of the options.
Anything else, Mark? Danny, is that anything? Robin?
Yes,
Okay.
several questions. Thank you. I know that you're saying that this company wants to be anonymous and that you state that the company is headquartered in the United States. Are they a United States company or are they owned by a foreign adversary?
Publicly traded.
Does that mean that they're?
Publicly traded.
In which
Okay, I
market?
guess
So, any of us
In which
could
stock
buy it if
exchange?
we want, or it may be in your portfolio now through a fund.
Anything else, Robin?
Of course, I'm very, 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 very sensitive to natural resources, wetlands, and, talked to IDEM and asked if there were wetlands present on the site. They suspect there are, and they said it would be the responsibility of the developer to get a wetlands, delineation report impacting the potential area. And also asked about the two, I call them ditches, but they state they are streams and would require a permit from our office for any placement of fill within those channels.
Correct.
So, the questions that I have are you doing the report for the wetlands?
Yes.
And I understand you don't have a classification yet for the one wetland.
Yep.
But will that be submitted to the city planner?
Yeah, I don't have
I don't know if it'll go to planning or,
We're going through internal reviews right now of the completed study, and then it will go to IDEM.
Okay.
Or jurisdictional review.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you say you're doing a tree assessment is it a certified arborist?
Yep.
Okay, and then are you gonna put some kind of tree preservation plan together to say what you're taking away and what you're gonna put in and what you're saving?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I think I have one more question. Check this. I made notes. I'm kind of curious, and I know this is all very preliminary. I'm a little concerned about that variance about the height of the buildings, and you're saying you cannot answer that question because you're not sure of the request of a potential client or person that's gonna house this. So just to understand, is each of these buildings at this time speculative? There's not contracts for any of these buildings from a client, am I understanding
The
that?
client would develop, own, and operate each of the buildings, so it's not the one like Pittsburgh last night.
Mhm.
That's a merchant data center, meaning that is speculative. They'll build it and lease out space within those buildings to different users. This is owner occupied and used, so it's not speculative from that standpoint. The reason that we don't know the exact heights at this time is because things do change, so we built in a little flexibility. Right now, the buildings that they are building are in the, 40?
Preference is single story, 40 foot is on average.
Okay. Can I ask a question then?
Of course.
Knowing that. So the buildings that are closest to the residents on the outer, there's the one up here and the one, is that down there, is that a building or is that a substation?
This one?
I think down in the.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a building. Yeah, that's a building.
Can you have a commitment saying that those will not exceed a certain height so they don't encroach on those residents that are next to those?
We'll take that back and take a look at that.
Okay, at this point, we've all been doing this for about an hour and a half, and those of you that are standing, are probably ready not to stand. So, what I need to know from the community is this. Our next land use meeting, regular monthly land use meeting is on April the 16th. This will be, and it will be at 6:30 in this building. Do you want to have another community meeting on April the 2nd, at which we can ask more questions? The petitioner can come if you would like them to, or it could be an opportunity for the community to organize and talk with each other and learn a little bit more about the process and what your options are as residents.
Will they be able to answer the questions they said they couldn't answer today?
Probably not on the 2nd of April.
Maybe not all, maybe some of them, maybe not all of them. It just
We can
depends.
either invite them or not invite them. It would be a chance, like I said, for the community to talk with each other and try and get a little organized, to learn a little bit more about how the zoning process in Marion County works. It could provide more information. They did get a very extensive set of questions that didn't even cover everything that we want them to answer, but they will not, they're saying no, probably not answers until the 16th of April. So there's a two-part question. Do you want to have a community meeting on April the 2nd? And if so, do you want the petitioner to come? So we're gonna do a straw poll. First of all, who would like to have another community meeting on the 2nd of April? Okay, that will be scheduled on the 2nd of April, right, April 2nd, right? At 6 o'clock. How many of you would like to have the petitioner come?
Oh.
Okay.
Not very popular.
You couldn't answer anything.
So, if as a community.
I get it, I was a Walmart guy for 20 years, so I know.
Whether you are in favor of this, opposed to this, or still don't know, that will be a community meeting on April the 2nd at this building at 6 o'clock. I would say will last about an hour and a half. Other than that, the next meeting where we would expect the developer to come back with a lot more information, like really a lot of information. Is April the 16th, and it will be at 6:30. Again, if you got a legal hearing and it has the date of April 10th, downtown, that will not be the hearing date. It will be no earlier than May the 15th. With that, I want to thank everyone for coming, everyone being patient. As you leave the building, please be careful. The line of sight to get out of our parking lot is difficult. Watch out for the traffic.
Kathy, could I just say,